What's going on, everybody? It is the NFL Experts. I'm Wayne G, joined as always by Mark. What's going on, Mark?
What up, Wayno? Doing good, man. On location at Starbucks. My Wi-Fi's been wonky again this week, but I don't care. I'm here. Let's do this.
All right, fantastic. Well, we have a great show lined up for you. A couple of quick hit topics that we're going to hit towards the end of the show. At the beginning of the show, we're going to have a writer and a show host here on the show, Clint Goss from Stadium Rant and 99.1 down there in Georgia. But before we get to him, let's make sure you are following us on social media. That is at NFL Experts Pod. Wrong button. That is NFL Experts Pod on YouTube. That is NFL Experts Pod on Twitter, at NFL Experts Pod on Instagram. Like I said, I already said YouTube, TikTok, NFL Experts Pod at Gmail. You can email us. With that said, welcome to the show. We have Clint Goss, the host of the Falcon Fade radio show. Like I said, that is on 99.1 down there in Georgia. It's also on Spotify if you want to find it, and on his Twitter feed. And he's a colleague of mine over at Stadium Rant and the Falcons guy there. Clint, thank you for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, before I let Mark dive into his questions, because Mark's got some questions he wants to fire away with, I'll say this. I guess talk about your Falcon fandom a little bit. Like, is it ever since you were a kid, or is it something like you moved there and you kind of became one? How did that work?
No, native Georgian. Didn't really have a choice. I guess I could have. I grew up more initially into, I was a season ticket holder for 20 years with the Dogs. But, I've been a fan of the Falcons since roughly about 2002, back, like you said, more the childhood time. And then here as a young adult, since I've moved up to North Georgia, living in the Atlanta area, gotten more into it. Last year was my first year covering the team, and that was a really good experience. And then heading into this off season, so it's a fandom that's grown for me. But no, it's been there since about 2002, but grown since then.
Fantastic, Mark. What was your first question, or what did you have for Clint?
Okay, I'm just gonna shoot straight from the gun, Clint. I got some questions on what you think about your Falcons coming up in this year. Oh. Is my mic on? Sorry.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I couldn't tell if I was on. Okay. So my first question would be, what's your confidence in Raheem Morris as your head coach going into the season?
I think the confidence is about as good as it could be. I say rookie coach. He's had the one stint, over a decade ago as a 32, 33-year-old coach at Tampa. But as far as somebody who's really getting a crack at it here, as confident as I could be. You look at Ra's background coming from this Rams team recently, working under Sean McVay and Les Snead, being the defensive coordinator for that Super Bowl winning team. And then just keep going back, his work in Washington, his work in Atlanta previously, his work in Tampa, his work, on and on, how well-spoken he is around the league. When we hired him as the head coach, I've never seen more of an outpouring of just like gushing of approval, or Mike Tomlin, Jalen Ramsey, the list goes on and on of people that were just like, man, this is the best hire. This guy, I don't understand, he hasn't been a head coach. And I think if you ask Ra, as far as the 32 head coaching jobs, I think this is his dream job, being the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, and even more specifically, being the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons for Arthur Blank owning the Atlanta Falcons. So I think that buy-in, also on top of his resume and just his personality and his charisma and how much he has brought a buy-in into the room, since he's been here. He really is. This isn't to be negative or to bash Arthur Smith, but, typically when you go regime to regime, you're looking for a lot of the inverse of what you had previously because, well, it didn't work. That's why they got fired. He is, in a lot of ways, the inverse to Arthur Smith. The friendly to the media guy. Nobody's smarter than Ra. It's collaborative. It's friendly. I feel like the press is more welcome. The team's more welcome, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All that to say, yes, and I'm sure we'll talk some later. If you brought in somebody who's been a head coach more extensively in the NFL, like if you had done the the narrative and done the Bill Belichick thing, yeah, you'd be saying, oh, there's a little more confidence. Always been a head coach. But for it to be more of the traditional, hiring a coordinator, getting their shot at it, I think I feel as confident as I could be. Have I agreed with everything that Ra's done since he's been here? And I'm sure we'll get into some of that. No. But no, completely behind him, and I feel as good as I could, I think.
I'm glad you brought up Bill Belichick, because obviously he was considered for the position. He went there, he interviewed like 2 or 3 times. And I wanted to get your thoughts, one, on your thoughts when he was in the interview process about potentially getting him, your thoughts about not getting him, and then your thoughts about whether or not it was because he didn't want to work with Rich McKay or because Robert Kraft called and said, don't hire him. Like, I'd love to get.
When it initially happened, that's a multi-level question. Yeah, first, when it initially happened, my response to kind of the reports of, oh, it's Belichick. Belichick's on the boat with blank. They're rolling the red carpet, et cetera, et cetera.
A little freeze here. So let's see. Clint's frozen for a minute while he's. Oh, here we go. Are you back? All right. You're froze for a minute there.
Yeah, I don't know where I last went out, but just saying, Belichick wasn't what I initially wanted, so I didn't really get that geeked up about it. And when it went down the stretch, as far as McKay, I don't think that was a very big deal, considering McKay is no longer in his position with the team. I think somebody expressed to Arthur Blank that it was time to go in a different direction there. But I think, I think people got realistic that Belichick wasn't going to come in here and work with Terry Fontenot and be collaborative, and he wasn't going to come in here and work with the other people in the building. I mean, that's not his style, man. You're not going to start doing that. I think that was a big part of it, and I think it was Blank wanting to enhance and promote Terry Fontenot's authority in this team and the management of this team. I think that was a lot of it, and not to say that I think they listen to what the fans say. They don't. If they'd have done that, they wouldn't have taken Penix at 8. Like, they don't listen to what the fans want. But I also think it was just a general in the building. It wasn't. Nobody was really feeling excited about it, and the fans weren't really feeling excited about it. This is a team that kind of can't afford to not kind of self-faith to the fan base, the media, the players, etc. And I think ultimately that Raw was the right hire, and particularly when you add Zach Robinson coming over to call plays for him. And I said earlier that Belichick wasn't my initial desire. I was more interested in some of those young play callers, for example. Well, you bring in Zach Robinson. I think he has head coaching upside should he come here and succeed for the next 2-3 years, like we would like to imagine. So I think that was one of those things where I said in hindsight, Raw was particularly the right hire, because when you watched how he built it out, I think particularly, the second we hired him, I was like, he's got to go get Zach Robinson. That was a no-brainer. And I think that added to it. But, you also asked me as far as what was it again with Belichick?
If you believe that Kraft called Blank and said, don't hire him.
I have to give an answer. I'll say yes, because not that I believe everything I read on the internet by any means. That almost is one that I'm like, man, someone really had to cook that up for that to be some BS. I think there could be some truth to that. I think that let's, conversationally here, let's say that did happen. Blank would take some serious consideration to Kraft's opinion there, and I think it had value. I don't think it was the kind of thing somebody was like, don't date this guy, and she's like, you're jealous. Like, no. I think it would have had a lot of value. So I think that happened.
So Clint, I'm in agreement with you. I do believe that Belichick was the wrong hire. I think Raheem Morris is a great hire. I tell Wayne all the time, like the new trend nowadays in the NFL is getting the new hot coordinator. And out of all the hot coordinators, he had the most experience. So I feel like that's that's a plus for them. So I guess my next question is, what's your thoughts on Kirk Cousins? That's the big news in the offseason for you guys. What's your thoughts?
Well, before I dive into that one, I'd kind of take a little snippet you just said right there. You were talking about Belichick and not thinking he's the right fit. I would just mention and say, you mentioned how Ra was kind of in that, hot young coordinators that were getting calls from multiple teams and flying around. For example, we called Ra, told him not to get on the flight to Seattle. He and Mike McDonald were kind of the final two in Seattle and the final two in Atlanta. It was kind of someone's going to get one, we're going to get the other, as I see it. Acknowledging that the Falcons are in no place to dust off or scoff Bill Belichick, because we are not. It would have been an odd forced fit, and I think that considering nobody else was talking to Belichick, nobody was inquiring, nobody was off. The Falcons also at the same time aren't in a place to be different. You said something about we're not in a place to be different. It was so funny. This would be the last thing I'd say about it is, when we started the process of searching for a head coach, McKay and Arthur Blank were priding themselves up there about, us two heading up this process versus Terry heading up this process. This isn't how other teams do it, but other teams are thinking about doing this. We're really kind of cutting edge here. And I sat there laughing and I said, since when have the Atlanta Falcons been cutting edge and doing something that nobody else is? Well, let's not model ourselves after, Kansas City and Dallas and Pittsburgh and San Francisco and teams like that. No, let's model ourselves after the Atlanta Falcons. That's what teams are going to do, So that'd be the last thing I'd say. As far as Cousins, I initially wanted a rookie quarterback. You could probably laugh at me and say, well, Clint, you got your wish there, buddy. As far as a rookie quarterback, I got both. But I saw the vision. I still see the vision as far as Cousins was Ra's guy. Schematically, he is a very good fit in that McVay style offense. Very middle of the field centric. I say somebody who drives the ball. Cousins drives the ball very adequately. Penix is more of the drive down the field character that gets them excited. That's another conversation. The contract was fine with me. Setting it up where you can really get out of it in 2 years. Setting it up where it's really some front-loaded money. Setting it up where it's guaranteed in the first 2 years where you can kind of get out of that $100 million. Setting it up where if things are going well, you can go third, fourth year. I understand some being uncomfortable, but I also have said and stand by it. Falcons had to make a move. It's like you done we'll try and be the career saver project with Marcus Mariota. You flushed it. You did we're going to be smarter than everyone and develop this third rounder in Desmond Ridder. You flushed it. It was time to go with more. And when I say sure thing, I know that's a mouthful, but a little safer bet. And they particularly hedged that bet taking Penix. So I think it's just the overall commitment to overhauling that QB room. That makes me feel good about Cousins. And like I said, I think I think schematically it does make sense that they circled him very early on, and it made the fit for him, considering he's down in Atlanta in the summers, and this is where his wife's from, et cetera, et cetera. But it's going to be interesting to see now with the rookie. I mean, I'll say this: you can tell in my voice, even as somebody who covers the team and has drank it in and has had time, that you can still hear confusion. You can't. Because it's just there's still so much unknown in terms of the thought process and plan and implementing Penix and in relation to Cousins. And you could sit here and be like, whoa, talking forever about it.
I think your next question was about Penix, wasn't it, Mark?
Yeah. Okay. So my next one would be, with having Cousins there, what's your thoughts on drafting Michael Penix in the first round? It was a surprise for everyone in the football world.
I mean, it was a surprise for me to the point I was covering the draft live for Stadium Rant. I mean, I literally walked off the stream for like 2 picks because I just was so blindsided. I've never been that blindsided on a live stream, admittedly. I mean, that was such a learning experience for me where it was just like, whoa, love Penix, hate the pick. And who knows? I'll look back in 3-4 years, he's starting and things are going well. I'll say I see the vision, and I get that. I hate the pick in the kind of mixed sell. We're win now, we're all in, but we're going to hedge our bets by going either way. Because look, I mean, and this is hypothetical, this is speculatory. If Kirk Cousins is the starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons last year, the Falcons win the South and go to the playoffs. Hell, I think if Michael Penix was the quarterback of the Falcons last year, they win the South and go to the playoffs. I mean, that's how poor the play from Ritter and Heineke was. And you could say to me, yeah, if those guys were playing for Arthur Smith, Clint, it could have been different. That's a conversation I'd hear you out. But all that just to say, both of those guys are such a massive improvement, both now and down the line. The pick, that gets me excited. Penix gets me excited. His ability to drive the ball down the field gets me excited. His confidence in his arm to drive the ball down the field gets me excited. His rapport with his teammates gets me excited, and how much everybody endorses him. And he's just a real humble guy. Seems like a nice fit down here. Seems like he's being positive in what, I could imagine is an awkward situation. We talk about how we didn't see this coming. I don't think Penix saw this coming. So I think he's been very mature about it. He's obviously somebody who's had a lot of trials and tribulations, and he's going to have another one here. And I think he's up for it, and I'm confident in that. And it's the kind of thing for me where I'm this kind of media member, and I'm this kind of fan, and I'm this kind of man. I'll whine about it for 10 minutes. I'll go outside and dog cuss the truck about it. But it's kind of, I'm ready to get behind Penix because I do like the guy. I think he has a ton of upside. I understand taking him to the top 10. Hell, New Orleans was calling. Seattle was calling. Vegas was calling. It's like the pick was there in terms of he wasn't lasting. I mean, his absolute floor was 13. It's just what you already had in the building. If we didn't ever sign Cousins and we just took Penix at 8 and used the Cousins money elsewhere, we'd all been like, yeah, this is great. It's like, I hate that for Penix and the fact that people would be excited about. I'm excited about him. We got to split that. We got to look at the pick and Penix differently. And that's kind of where I stand with it. I thought it was bold. I had said going into the draft that Leatu out of UCLA, that the pass rusher was my guy that I wanted, and I thought the stars were going to line up. I thought the value was there. Ended up being there. If you'd have taken him at 8, okay, you could have traded back, say, with a Vegas at 13. He'd have been there. He fell to 15. You tried to trade back up into the top 10, as we've seen from recent footage from the Jets, for example, that the Falcons were that high on Leatu. So, I mean, that was a very much so. As the Falcons have come out and said, Penix was the number 3 overall player on their board. They felt very passionately to have passed on Leatu. And look, this will be the last thing I'd say about it. Okay, you felt passionately. I can respect that, and that's honorable. You better feel passionately because this draft class is tied to that. It's like, I'm excited about Brandon Dorlus in the 4th round out of Oregon. I'm excited about Braylon Trice in the 3rd round out of Washington. I'm excited about the upside of Aruka Rororo out of Clemson. I'm excited about some of those later round picks, like a Casey Washington out of Illinois, a Zion Logue out of Georgia. It's all that to say, though, nobody's going to be talking about them if Penix goes out and is a dud. We're just not.
Well, you brought up 2 points. I'm glad you did. One of them is about Kirk Cousins and how good the Falcons will be with Kirk Cousins at the start, and then also about Penix and how highly they thought of him. When this pick happened, I was surprised because I think we all expected Penix to go mid to late 1st round. And when they took him at 8, I was surprised. However, I thought it was an amazing pick by them. I thought it was a great pick because I do think like I saw the vision as Kirk Cousins. Yes, he signed a 4-year, $180 million deal, but he really just signed a 2-year, $100 million deal. So really what they're looking at is they're not looking to keep him there for 4 years. They're looking at 2 years and then they need a replacement. The 4 years is just, it's smoke and mirrors. It's 2 years and they need a replacement. So you either get Penix in this draft, who is an incredible prospect, right? Or you're looking at, going 12-5. And then next year, you get Quinn Ewers, maybe something in the second or third round. If you wait 2 years, then you're going to start a rookie like Dante Moore at quarterback. So to me, getting a guy like Michael Penix, developing him for 2 years, I think was absolutely genius, because now 2 years from now, you get a guy who knows the playbook completely, not a little bit, and has incredible talent.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of the Matt Ryan situation trauma throughout the building as well, just in terms of not having an heir, not having anyone who had any time to come in and get acclimated and develop in the building. I think that was a big part of it. As you mentioned about the 2 years, $100 million more so versus the, initially, 4 year, $180 million. You said smoke. It's like, you've heard Terry Fontenot and company with the, well, if we look up in 4 to 5 years and, Penix is still on the bench because we're playing Cousins, that means we're playing so well, and that's a good problem. That's complete, like yuck, 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 knock, knock jokes. Like, that's not the case. Cousins is here for 2 years and hoping he plays 2 years. I don't, want him to play those 2 years. I'd be hard to imagine playing beyond that. And then, the last thing I'd say is just, you said, most of us, I think, projected Penix mid to late first. Yes and no. I think that down the stretch there, that last week or two, he was definitely established as a first rounder. The second round conversation was gone. And I think that late conversation was gone too, really, when you dig deeper. I think he was established. You could say we looked at him as a mid first in that 13 to Vegas, 16 to Seattle kind of stretch, but New Orleans, that's a little rich, but you get the point. I had him in my final mock to Denver at 12, just for perspective, just to say that he surged. He did a lot.
Okay, so my next question will be, he's going to be, I know Kirk Cousins isn't going to be starting right away in training camp and during OTAs. And so you're going to see Penix, and he's going to be flinging the ball around, and all the other teammates are going to see him. So my thought is with all that going on, how long do you think he wins? How long do you think it is until he wins a starting job? Is it this year, next year?
It'd be tough for it to be this year, barring an injury out of Cousins. If for no other reason, you're putting a lot of pressure on the guy in terms of the cash you'd eat with Cousins and all the cash you'd eat with Cousins. I think, Cousins is healthy, and also with respect to Penix, if Cousins is healthy and out there and playing Kirk Cousins football, I don't imagine Penix is about to go outplay him right now, respectfully. Yes, his arm talent might pop a little quicker, particularly, at first glance. But I think when the players viewing this on a day-to-day basis see Cousins' experience, see Cousins' touch, see Cousins' ability to be a leader, be QB1, manage an offense in a huddle, et cetera, et cetera. Year two, maybe I don't see it this year. Barring injury, Penix going to be doing a whole lot of chilling.
All right. Well, you mentioned liking the second round pick, Aurora, and I got to be honest with you, that's the one that blew my mind, because they take him there. You need a cornerback to go with AJ Terrell, and you've got Cooper DeJean is still there. You've got Kool-Aid still there. You need another receiver to go with Drake London, and AD Mitchell's still there. And they go with Aurora. He wasn't even the best defensive tackle on the board. Yet Jerzon Newton still hadn't been picked yet. It was a mind-blowing pick to me. So I'm curious, because you liked it, what it was that you liked about that particular pick.
I had Newton as a top 15 player. So understand that in that moment, I wanted Newton. But digging into imagining, well, why wasn't that who they wanted? I think when you look at it, look at that stretch of interior defensive line that went. Ruke Orhorhoro, 35 to Atlanta. Johnny Newton, 36 to Washington. T'Vondre Sweat, 38 to the Titans. And then Braden Fisk, 39 to the Rams. So, that market was timed in terms of getting your guy and your preference of the litter. And I think when you dig deeper into it, look at the arm length. I mean, that was the big – when Ra was asked about, Orhorhoro and what was the sell there versus some others, he talked so much about length and the desire and need for length. Well, you look at it, Orhorhoro's arm length, 34 inches. Johnny Newton's arm length, 32 and about a third inches. T'Vondre Sweat, 33 and a quarter. Braden Fisk, 31. Okay, go deeper. Look at their height. Orhorhoro, 6'4". Johnny Newton, 6'1". T'Vondre Sweat, 6'4". Braden Fisk, 6'3.5". Do acknowledge, T'Vondre Sweat's also 6'4". Yeah, he's 366 pounds and had a relative athletic score under 5 and plays a nose tackle versus I think Orhorhoro will be brought in as a 3-tech and gradually work his way out to a 4-eye and then best case scenario, end up as a 5-tech in this defense. So I think, there is some legitimacy to Ra saying that the length was superior, the athletic testing was superior. I mean, Ruke tested 15th out of 1,808 combine defensive linemen. That's 99.2nd percentile in the last 20 or so years. This guy that only started playing at 17 years old, he is raw like sushi raw. But I see being excited about all that. We're talking about Ra. We're talking about a coach who's gotten so much street cred, traditionally. But let's just look at the last year of taking these 3rd, 4th round guys on the defensive line and just maximizing their talent so quick. Look at Kobe Turner as a 3rd rounder out in LA as a rookie. Look at Byron Young as a 3rd, 4th rounder out of Tennessee out there as a first year. The sack production they got out of those two and the pass rush win rate they got out of those two. I think that was some of the vision with Ruke, and that was some of the vision with Ruke in terms of who's also in the building. It's going to be Grady Jarrett's 10th year in the league playing 3-tech. This is going to be David Onyemata is not going to play forever either, just in terms of getting youth on that defensive line, getting some depth. I mean, look, if you look at it as a unit, I've talked so much here about hindsight and letting it all fill out. I mean, as a unit in terms of a 2nd, a 3rd, and 4th round pick to walk out with Ruke Orhorhoro, Braylon Trice, and Brandon Dorless, who in my opinion was the best value pick of the class. That's work, and that's something where you look at Ra and be like, okay, we'll see. This is definitely Ra has said before. It's kind of like Mike Tomlin has said. It's their job is to coach, and I think this is one where he's priding himself on with Orhorhoro. This is a aiming for the ceiling big time thing. So yeah, I'll put the heat on Ra to say like, okay, I want to look up at second contract time and this dude be a cat.
All right, so my next question, what's your record prediction, and can they win the NFC South, and are they a playoff team?
They need to be a playoff team. I mean, look, a floor has been established in the last 3 years. You've gone 7-10 the last 3 years. You've done that with Arthur Smith as the coach. You've done that with stagnant offensive play calling. You've done that with inferior than league average quarterback play. You've done that in a rebuild. You've done that with cap hemorrhages the first 2 years and a dumpster fire situation there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The quarterback's here now. You nearly won the division last year with all of those handicaps that you had. Hell, you got 2 quarterbacks here now. You brought in the new coach. You got the young play caller. The money's spent. Your competition, I mean, look at the division. Carolina's not going to do anything this year. I don't think New Orleans is going to do anything this year. It's you or Tampa going head-to-head just like last year. And as far as record prediction, like I put in here, if we go 7-10, we riot. because that's your floor after these 3 years. And there has to be improvement.
Yeah.
I'd say the floor is 9-8. And I'd say the ceiling's 11-6. And that's me being realistic. I think when you look at the division, I think you sweep Carolina. I'd say a split between New Orleans and Tampa. That's 4-2. I think that's very realistic. And then when you look at the rest, there's some nice names on here. I mean, you got the Chiefs, you got the Eagles, you got Dallas, you got Seattle, got Minnesota. So I think when you go down that stretch, 4, 5, 6 losses is probably there. But look, if you go 10-7, 11-6, that's enough to win this division this year, go into the playoffs, try and win a playoff game. Do I think this team's about to go make a Super Bowl run? No, I don't. Not yet, at least. But look, I'll just speak for myself as a media member and a consumer. Winning the South, winning 10, 11 games, and going and putting up a fight in the first playoff game, particularly winning one. Oh, I'd be walking, very good quarterback play, and we see something to be excited about with this Penix pick, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, I'd be sitting here going, great year. Let's get to it. Let's not draft Shador in the draft. Ha ha ha. I would like that. I think that's very realistic. Because like I said, when you look at this between the Dallases and the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Vikings, it's like there's going to be some losses there. There's no excuse for this not to be an above 500 team, even so.
Well, from the pro game to the amateur game, I wanted to ask about the Georgia Bulldogs, who didn't make the playoff this year. They go to the Orange Bowl. They beat Florida State 63-3. Now, obviously, the previous year, they completely trashed TCU in the national championship game. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the 63-3. Was this them a statement basically saying we should have been in the playoff? Look at this. Or was it more like they were playing a JV team because 3/4 of the FSU team called out sick?
Lazy answer. I think it's a little half and half. I think, from the Bulldogs perspective, I think it was kind of a FU to the committee. We're going to show you how physical we are versus the product you're going to get out of, what they'd imagine you'd get in the playoff games. We are more talented across the board. We only had the one loss to Alabama, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That team was frustrated. It's like I said, that those teams were pissed in different ways, and different ways of being left out. And with Florida State, they took a different approach. And I won't speak ugly on it, but I think there, on the other half, I think there is some, mootness to it. Because let's get real. That was Kirby Smart even said it himself after. He was like, the committee and the NCAA, et cetera, have got to y'all got to take note of this, and we've got to make some changes so this is going to continue to happen. So that in itself was a statement. I think the Dogs win that game anyway. I know like Keon Coleman, for example, was talking and chirping in the last week or so. For me, it's like, can we quit talking about this? I don't care. I'm still hearing about the Marvin Harrison hit. I don't care. So I don't look too much into that, and I don't think at this point the program does either. It's didn't read too much into that, and it was disappointing because I was excited for that. Heck, I'm as into it as it comes, and I'll sit here and tell you I didn't watch the fourth quarter of that.
All right. And then the last question I had here for you was regarding Carson Beck. Now, I like to look at way too early drafts. If you look at last year's way too early drafts now, Kalen King was a first-round pick, and half of them, he ended up going in the 7th round to the Packers. I'm curious, Carson Beck right now seems to be a top 10 pick in a lot of these way too early mock drafts. And I'm curious to get your thoughts as a Bulldogs fan. Why is he not Jake Fromm? When I look at him, Fromm was a better prospect in high school, only did 3 years at college. This guy's in his second senior year. He's going to be a 5th-year senior. What makes Carson Beck so good, and why is he not going to be that Jake Fromm style?
Well, with respect to Fromm, because I'm not going to trash him in this segment. It's Fromm. Led a Georgia team to a national championship appearance. Fromm has a Super Bowl, has a Rose Bowl Fromm has a Rose Bowl win under his belt. For example, it's like Jake Fromm has done a lot of great for the University of Georgia. But in response to your question, you said that about him being a higher profile recruit. It was a little easier for him to be a little high profile recruit as the kind of pretty North Georgia Little League World Series alum with a little better supporting cast. I mean, you cut on the tape of Beck down there in South Florida. North Florida, I'd have to double check that. I mean, he's got some horrific supporting casts his senior year. Bless his heart. That guy was carrying the team by himself, trying not to get caught in a body bag. But, going beyond that to the point, the difference, looking at him in terms of some kind of God-given abilities, some God-given traits, Beck's 6'4", 220, kind of long, well-built a guy versus a Fromm, I'll tell you he's 6'1". I think he'd be closer to 6 foot. And not as much athleticism there. And in terms of, I talk about God-given arm talent. Fromm was never somebody prided on being more than kind of an adequate arm strength character. Really was prided on precision, efficiency, keeping the ball out of harm's way, leadership qualities, not being selfish, managing a tough run game downhill. Versus Beck is more of the ability to layer the ball sideline to sideline, hash to the other sideline, and really more open up an offense and go empty. I think you'll also see Beck going into a year where he's already perceived as one of the top prospects on a surging team. I think it's just, a lame answer, just cutting the tape on it. I think the superior height, the superior length, the superior zip on the ball, ability to layer it, kind of make NFL style throws, and also just the fact that he's going to be coming into a pardon me, I hate to say weaker class, but it is.
All right. Well, I do appreciate you coming on the show. It is Clint Goss. He is the host of the Falcon Fade radio show that is on 99.1. It's on Spotify and on his Twitter. And obviously you can read his articles on Stadium Rant. Definitely great having you on the show. Love talking Falcons with you, and we really appreciate you having you on.
Yes, thank you, Clint. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, Mark. So with the Falcons talk, I do have to bring up, I know Man Hour chimed in a little bit here. We do have, Mike, of course, with the Oh No, a Falcons fan. And then Who Hurt You? I don't know if he's talking to me because I didn't see the comments until late. I know I can get a little bit passionate about some of my takes, so maybe he was referring to that. But we get to talk a little bit more NFL talk. And there is a segment that I did steal from Stadium Rant. Sorry, guys, but I'm stealing it. It's mine now. They called it Zero to Hero. We're going to call it Worst to First. And the idea is our thoughts on the AFC, NFC, the teams who finished at the bottom of their division, which ones have the best chance of finishing at the top of their division in 2024. So let's start with the AFC because both of our teams are in the AFC. So the AFC division basement last season was the Bengals, the Titans, the Chargers, the Patriots. So talk to me, which team do you think has the best chance of winning their division this year?
Wayne, well, when you asked me this question, I looked over all the teams from last year in the standings. For one, the South's going to be really hard to predict. I think all of the teams did a lot of stuff to improve themselves, and that division is like always a fight every year anyway. So that one for me is I couldn't tell you. That one I'd probably just have to guess. Throw some darts. But the Bengals, I think, are the one team in the AFC. They're definitely not going to be last, especially if Burrow comes off this injury okay and he stays healthy throughout the year, because they're one of the better teams, in my opinion, in the AFC. So that's based on health. So if I had to go with any team, I would go with the Bengals.
I have to agree with you. I mean, the Bengals, they get back Joe Burrow, and we know that when Burrow is healthy, this is a team that goes to the Super Bowl. This is the team that goes to the AFC Championship game. This is a really good football team when Joe Burrow is healthy. Now, he does get injured every other year, so statistically, he should be healthy this year for the whole year, which means watch out Patrick Mahomes, because I think he's 3-1 against Patrick Mahomes. So Mahomes does not want to see Joe Burrow in the playoffs.
No.
But I do think that the Bengals are a team, and that's the funny thing I think about the AFC North, right? You've got the Steelers, you've got the Browns, you've got the Ravens, and all 4 of those teams could win 12 games. I mean, not together, but I'm saying, like, in theory, each one has a chance to win 12, 13 games because they're all that good. But only one team, or maybe 2, can come out of that division. I think it's the Bengals. I think they're the ones, even though the Steelers, I think, upgraded at quarterback, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. I do think that the Bengals are the team. I don't think the Patriots have any shot of winning the AFC East. No shot at all. And I don't think that the Titans have a shot at winning the AFC South. I know they added some receivers. I just don't think that they're good enough. Tony Pollard is a huge downgrade over Derrick Henry. So really it comes down to me, the Chargers and the Bengals. And unfortunately, the Chargers, Justin Herbert, great, new coach. They're not beating the Chiefs. Yeah, nobody's beating the Chiefs in the West.
No, that's why I was like, AFC West, taking that one off. No one's winning that. That's Mahomes' division now for a long time. Even though I'm a Bronco fan, I can admit that. But I'm glad that you brought up the Titans. I'm kind of with you on that one, Wayne. They did improve. They did get some free agents. I guess for me, my question mark would be Will Levis. The Titans are basically telling him, hey, we're going to give you everything we can to make you succeed. So let's see what you can do. So this is kind of a prove-it year for him. Don't you think?
I do think it's a prove-it year. Well, he was a rookie last year, so I don't want to say it's a prove-it year in the sense that if he doesn't do well, he's out of a job. But I do think if he doesn't do well, they might draft somebody in the 2nd or 3rd round this year. So I think that he does have some competition behind him theoretically if he doesn't perform well, because he does have all those weapons now. I mean, Treylon Burks, I think, is the 4th best receiver on the team. So he's got a loaded receiving core. He's got a great arm. We'll see what he can do. I look at that, and obviously we got the Texans, CJ Stroud. They won 10, 11 games last year, and they just got Stephon Diggs. So and Joe Mixon. So, I mean, this is a team that's probably going to win the South, but maybe Trevor Lawrence is still with the Jaguars. They added some weapons too. They won 9 games last year, and that was a bad year for them. So they're a team that could win 10, 11 games. I just don't think there's any place for the Titans in the South.
But I got to tell you, though, as we're talking about this, Wayne, I think I have more confidence with the Titans than I do the Colts. I'm not totally sure that Anthony Richardson's play style is going to work. Like, he's like a Cam Newton, this big dude that wants to run. Cam Newton was always hurt. Like, I hate to say that about him because I wouldn't want to put that on him. But I think the Titans would have a better chance than the Colts would in that division.
Well, maybe we're talking about winning the division. I mean, could the Titans win the division over the Jaguars and the Texans?
In that case, yeah, no.
So the NFC is a little bit more interesting. In the NFC, the basement teams were your Panthers, the Bears, the Commanders, and the Cardinals. So of those 4 teams, which one do you think has the best chance of winning their division in 2024?
I know this is going to probably sound crazy, and it's not really a hot take because, Wayne, we don't do that on this show. But my take would be, I think it's going to be the Bears. I think they have a ton of weapons. They got Caleb Williams, who's supposed to be this generational talent. He's walking into a great situation there, better than any other previous QB before him. So, and I think that division is winnable. I don't know if Sam Darnold is going to be the answer in Minnesota. Jordan Love is still on his upper trajectory. The Lions, they won it last year, but I feel like they take a lot of risks. So they could possibly lose some games that they might have won last year because of those risks. And I think that gives the Bears a shot.
See, I think the Bears are the popular pick here, but let me warn you, the Bears are a mirage. Yes, you see the palm tree, the delicious, cool, clear water. You go and take a sip. Blah, blah, that's sand. It's not really a water. So listen, the Bears do have to play against Green Bay. Jordan Love is going to be even better this year than he was last year. They added Xavier McKinney. They added Javon Bullard in the draft. They added Josh Jacobs. They're going to be a really good team. They're going to be better, just like the Texans were better. I expect Green Bay to be in that NFC Championship game possibly again. The Lions, obviously, Jared Goff, he's playing for a contract. He's been a top 5 quarterback in the NFL the last 2 seasons. I don't expect that to change. I think the Bears have to jump over really high hurdles to win this division. My pick, the Panthers. And let me tell you why. Because I do believe in Bryce Young. I do think they added some weapons. They did get offensive line help. They did help out Burns on the edge, or they traded Burns, but they got the edge that they drafted. The team looks pretty good. And who do they have to beat? The Saints, the Bucks, the Falcons, none of those teams scare me. So if I'm looking at these 4 teams, the Commanders, are they going to beat Dallas and Philadelphia? Philadelphia just added Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell at corner. They're not beating Philadelphia. They're not beating Dallas, with Dak Prescott. You get the Cardinals. They've got to beat the 49ers, the Rams, the improved Rams, right? And the Seahawks. So of all the teams that have to be beat to win a division, I think the easiest road is through the South.
I would have to agree on you on that one, Wayne. That is a very winnable division, but I don't know if I'm the same as you and have the same confidence in Bryce Young. I really don't. So I still pick the Bears.
Okay, that's fair. It's the Bears. But obviously they got a new quarterback. And speaking of quarterbacks, there is something I really wanted to bring up with you because you and I had a wonderful conversation. Actually, before we dive into this conversation, we did get a couple more comments here. Let's see if this is Mike. Mike, what's going on, man hour? Bucks will win the division. They could. The Bucks could win that division. Obviously, Baker Mayfield, you re-signed Evans. They're the favorites, but they're not exactly world beaters. So I do think that they could still not win that division. And then Buck says, but the Panthers will win a few games and make it close. Well, that's my point. If you win a few games, it's going to be a close race because the winner out of that division is going to win 8 games, 9 games. All right. Quarterback, Denver, Pittsburgh. We have a report from ESPN's Aditi Kinkhabwala, who did a report saying that, Russell Wilson was too dumb to get the playbook. They had to simplify the words. They had to give him a wristband. He couldn't run it. All this jazz. And you sent this to me yesterday, and I immediately sent you a rebuttal that the Broncos Country Tonight, it's a 94.1 FM show in Denver, Broncos Country Tonight. They said Russell Wilson had his best season under Brian Schottenheimer, who has famously long verbose play calls. So they don't buy this for a second that he couldn't grasp the playbook or the language in the playbook. And I'm starting to think, maybe not. I don't know what to believe. But the reason I'm asking you about it was your response yesterday and how passionate you were about this topic. And I want you to let some of that rage out here.
I'm not totally sure what you're looking for, Wayne. I sent this to you because ultimately, after we talked about this, I was thinking about what I was going to say today on the show about this topic. But ultimately, Wayne, my allegiance is with the Broncos and not with the players. But I am the type of fan that I root for the players. But for me, it was one of those things where I really liked Russell in the beginning, and then he just soured on me after so long. It wasn't just Sean Payton in last year. It was the year before where he was trying to be a pocket passer and Hackett's offense. He's trying to be Aaron Rodgers' offense. He's not Aaron Rodgers, sorry. And then he had a terrible year. And then he comes the next year with Sean Payton. And Sean Payton kind of, I think, did him a solid and kind of revived him because he could have had another season like he did with Hackett if Sean Payton didn't make these changes that they're saying that he's too dumb to handle. Like, I watched every game, Wayne, and then part of the reason why I sent this to you, why I'm so passionate about it, is because I watched every game, so I seen the struggle throughout the whole time he was here. Like, the first year with Hackett, he struggled trying to be this pocket quarterback that he's not. And you saw how that went. And then the next year with Peyton, granted, his stats were good, but look at our win-loss record. Like, he wasn't winning us games. Granted, he had better stats. He wasn't throwing all the interceptions. So the numbers lie to you in that sense because our record was terrible still. We didn't make the playoffs. That ultimately was our goal. And then the whole thing with the NFLPA at the end of it, how he brought them in was like, oh, this is illegal, da-da-da-da-da. But you know what? The Broncos didn't do anything illegal. They didn't bench him like he said they were going to do. They waited till his performance was poor, and that's why they benched him because he wasn't getting the job done. We weren't making the playoffs. I know Sean Payton came out and said that Stidham was going to be a spark. We all knew that was bullshit. But like I said, my allegiance is with the team, so I have to be with Peyton now and with my Broncos and hope that Bo Nix is the answer. And after the experience I had with Russ, I don't think he's going to do well in Pittsburgh. I think you're going to see the same thing that you saw here, but he's not going to have an offensive coach. He's going to get Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin. Both those guys are like, well, I know Tomlin's a defensive-minded coach. I don't know totally Arthur Smith's background, but I know what I seen from him in Atlanta, and what wasn't great. So I don't have much confidence in him going there, and I feel like Fields is going to end up starting anyway. And I'm not just saying that because I'm bitter and because I hate Russell Wilson. I just seen what I saw. Like I'm like we always say, Wayne. I do the eye test, and from what I saw, like he looks like a quarterback on the decline.
See, the reason I wanted to bring it up and the reason I wanted you to talk about it is because the folks who've been listening to the show since week 1, they know that at the end of last season, you were team Russ. You were not team Peyton. You thought that Russ was getting a raw deal with Peyton benching him and then eventually cutting him. You didn't like it at all. You said Peyton's screwing this team up for the long run. And then over the course of the offseason, you became anti-Russ, pro-Peyton, to the point that like you hate Russ. You just complimented Aaron Rodgers. That's how much you hate Russell Wilson right now. And I'm just trying to understand how over the last 4 months, Russell Wilson became more hated in your eyes than Aaron Rodgers.
Like I was saying, it was all the NFLPA stuff. It was like him going on Brandon Marshall podcast, him trying to like put out there that like he's the good one. It really pissed me off, Wayne, that like as soon as like we cut him and we were decided we were gonna take this dead cap, everybody was like immediately on his side and immediately like hated the Broncos. And I just hate that. I guess I hate all the hate towards the Broncos, and it's all the time. And it's like, it's just another thing. It's like, where's all the shit that we were hearing about Russ? Like when he was a Bronco, like nobody was saying any of that. Like I just didn't like that point.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that we talked about this a little bit in our chat as well. So a little bit of the behind the scenes here on the air is where we place our focus, because I know that you had messaged me after the draft and you said, how come everyone hates the Broncos draft? And I highlighted the word everyone, because then I showed you 20 draft grades and only 2 people gave them poor grades and everybody else gave them like a B+ or an A. So everyone being the one that I saw, and so when you're like, everyone was on Russ's side, I don't think everyone was on Russ's side. I think some people were fine with the move, and now it's like, well, everyone's not. I would avoid using the term everyone. It's like, let's just say the things that I've seen.
You're correct, Wayne. I shouldn't say everyone, but from what I saw, it just seemed like everyone was on his side and against us. And I was just like, where's all the hate that they were talking about him when he was here? And all of a sudden that's gone. Like, that's what I didn't like.
All right. Well, I'm going to throw kind of like a 2-minute warning. I don't know if you have one. I know I told you I have a 2-minute warning that I got to get off my chest, and we can obviously both discuss it. And maybe you can think about something. You don't have to come up with one.
I do have one.
All right, good. So Austin Rivers, the NBA player, I'm going to say former. He is the son of Doc Rivers, and he played at Duke. He then played in the NBA for a little bit, not very well. And he's come out now and said that there are more NBA players who could play in the NFL than there are NFL players that could play in the NBA. What I love about athletes is they're just as dumb as the rest of America, but they get microphones shoved in their face. So we all get to hear what they have to say. And so the problem here is the same number of NBA players would be good NFL players as the other way around. Zero would be. I think it is disrespectful to say that some guy who's never played football could walk onto a football team and beat out somebody who's been playing it since they were 7. That is so disrespectful. That's like me saying again, like Myles Garrett is a decent basketball player when you watch highlights of him. He can reverse dunk and windmill and he can shoot threes. He's decent. You put him against, what's he, 6'3", 6'4"? He's a guard. I know he's big and muscular. He's a guard. You put Chris Paul on Myles Garrett, he doesn't score a single basket in 48 minutes of play. No substitutions. He doesn't score one basket. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a skill level. It's not just athleticism. These guys have been practicing and honing their skills for 20 years. And you're just going to walk off a football field, pick up a basketball, and be able to play? No, that's not how it works. Same thing the other way around. This was just a completely stupid statement.
And I want to tell you, Wayne, I completely agree, and I'm glad that you brought this up in your 2-minute warning. I kind of have this, I don't want to just be generally with everything like I seem to be tonight, but I feel like a lot of these athletes that are on these shows, I feel like they don't do a lot of work behind their takes. So they just throw off comments off the cuff, like Austin Rivers did, saying this idiotic comment. And for me, it's like Cecil said a couple of shows ago, podcasts are work. This is work. And they just like take it for granted. And that's why he just said what he said, because he didn't research his information. He just said something that he would just blurt it out. He probably didn't even think about it. And that's what I don't like. And I hear it all the time on local radio, and it drives me nuts, because it's like, is it because they were entitled as football players that they can just, I'm okay with this radio thing? I'm not totally sure, but that irritates me. I'm not sure your take on it, Wayne.
Well, absolutely. You know, I hate hot takes for the sake of hot takes. Here's where I'll give Austin Rivers a little bit of defense. If I'm defending him, there's not a great defense. I don't think it's a hot take for the sake of a hot take in Austin Rivers. I just think he's a moron. And so I think he's actually believes what he's saying. Unlike guys like Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless and Colin Cowherd, who say things they don't even believe. They'll say things one day like Michael Jordan would average 1 point per game today in his prime, you know, and then the next day they'll be like, Michael Jordan is the greatest ever. They just say whatever to get tons of clicks. I don't think Austin Rivers is doing that. I just think the guy's an idiot and he's saying idiot things because he probably says idiot things all the time. He just happened to have a camera in his face when he did this time.
That's what I'm saying. He didn't research it. He just thought he was smart enough to just say whatever, and he said idiotic shit. But I'm glad that you brought up basketball, because that's where my minute warning is. Okay, so I'm not totally sure you heard. Okay, I'm really heavily watching the Nuggets series right now against the Timberwolves, and they've been playing really badly. They're the former champs. They lost the last 2 games in Minnesota. Last one real bad by 30. And today, Gilbert Arenas, a former player, came out in his podcast and said that he got texts from a bench player from the Nuggets, wouldn't say who, and he basically read all the texts that this guy basically like told him in confidence, which I think was that's another thing I don't like, but that's for another show. And he came out and he said that this player came out and said that our coach Malone doesn't know how to use the bench, and that he's wasting this player's time, and that he gives him his all every game. And for me, I'm the type of person, Wayne, that like when you have a team or a family, you keep your drama in house. You don't air out your dirty laundry, as they say. And Peyton Watson basically aired out the Nuggets' dirty laundry to this guy. Granted, he probably thought he was telling him in confidence, but you really got to watch it as a pro these days, who you tell what. And this guy blasted it all over media. And that's how I found out about it. And it's just like, if you didn't say anything to this guy and say all this shit, nobody would know about it. Gilbert Arenas wouldn't be saying anything about it, and we wouldn't have all this drama. And now there's even more drama. So like, there's drama in the locker room and whatever. And he just started a whole new thing that we don't need. And they're already down 0-2, and it just pisses me off. Well,
I have 2 thoughts on this. The first one is, so what you're saying is that we have a guy who's been the star player of every team he's played on throughout his career until he turned pro. Every amateur coach from middle school to high school to AAU to college has been sucking him off up until now. And he thinks he's better. He thinks he's better than he is. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know. So that's my first thought. The second thing I want to point out is Gilbert Arenas, because Gilbert Arenas, a couple days ago in this series, Rudy Gobert was going to miss the game because his wife was having a kid. And Gilbert Arenas said he's missing a playoff game for a kid. Dude, he's going to be there when you get back, you know? And I just thought, you know, Gilbert Arenas, did you know that, like, maybe you're not supposed to point your gun at a teammate in the locker room? I don't know. Which one's the bigger deal? Missing a playoff game or pointing a gun at your teammate? So that's the first thing. And secondly, when it comes to family stuff, kids trump all. I don't care if it's the Super Bowl and my team's never been, and this is their first trip ever there, and I'm the star quarterback, I'm missing the game for the birth of my child. It's just, that's more important than any game, no matter what. It may not be more important to the fans, but I don't care. The fans aren't having my baby. So I'm going and I'm going to be with my wife during that time.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because obviously this guy's all about hot takes. So it just really pissed me off. It's like, granted, it's just like, damn it, it's another guy out there just throwing hot takes out there. Who knows if any of this stuff is true? He's just saying it to say it because he wants clicks. He wants people to watch it. He wants us to be talking about it. We shouldn't be, but we are. But yeah, I'm glad you agree, Wayne.
Yeah, for sure. And we did have a comment here from John Peebles I missed. It says maybe, but next year Super Bowl Detroit versus Vegas. So I'm not sure if this is when we're breaking down our worst to first. Here he has Detroit versus Vegas, the Raiders, and Gardner Minshew representing the AFC. This must have been about the AFC West, and we're talking about how nobody's beaten Kansas City. But yeah, what do you think about the Raiders in the Super Bowl?
That's what I think.
I have no hatred towards the Raiders, but John, that's a bad take. That's a bad take, John. So thank you for listening and thank you for participating in the show. And also thank you to Mike who sent in some comments. Thank you to Clint, who was our guest today. Had a great show. Sir. Absolutely. Had a great time interviewing him. Next week, we got your buddy, Denver sports writer. I'm excited because I'm a sports writer to kind of go toe to toe with him.
Yes, we're gonna have my friend, and he's the editor of Denver Sports. His name's James Marilat. Me and him, he's kind of a sort of a mentor. He kind of helped me along with this sports thing. I'm always asking him questions about Denver sports. We go back and forth, and he was on my podcast before I was on NFL Experts, and I just been wanting to get him on. We've been having some guests, so I feel like he's perfect. And like I was telling you, Wayne, he's got some takes that a lot of people in this town don't like because and that's part of the reason why I like him is because he says what he thinks and he stands by his statements, and I appreciate that.
Nice, because I do the same thing. I say things, if people don't like it, tough luck. That's what I think. So I got to try to find one of his takes. If I read some of his stuff, find a take that I really don't like, and I'm gonna take him to the shed with it.
I knew you would. Party on, Wayne.
Party on, Mark.